Good evening, everyone. Thanks for being here. We're going to give another minute or two as one or two more members might be on their way. Thank you.
Just a quick announcement. The name tags were put out, but if you want to consolidate or move around, that is just fine too. So feel free to move if you'd like. Unless you're staff.
Good evening, everybody. The Clovis Citizens Advisory Committee meetings are open to the public at the physical address listed above. There are numerous ways to participate in the Citizens Advisory Committee meetings. You are able to attend in person. You may participate virtually by joining the WebEx meeting. See WebEx participation below. And you may view the meeting, which is webcast and accessed at www.cityofclovis.com/CAC. Members of the public will be able to make verbal comments via WebEx by using the raise hand function or by messaging the host to join the queue to speak. Participants wishing to make a verbal comment via WebEx will need to ensure that they access the meeting with audio transmission capabilities. At this time, I'd like to go ahead and call the meeting to order. I want to welcome our City Council this evening. Thank you very much for making the effort and the time to join us this evening to listen to our input. And I want to welcome all of our Citizens Advisory Committee members also for staying with us and enjoying being part of the presentation this evening. I'd like to start out with our flag salute. If I could ask Mr. Vane, could you please conduct us in our flag salute this evening? Thank you. I'd like to now ask the clerk to take roll call for the Citizens Advisory Committee and City Council.
Right. At this time, all members of the CAC are present with the exception of Karen Bach, Karen Chisholm, Noah Elbaz, Eulalio Gomez, Kintutu Kalabi, Chris Milton, David Samarco, and Jay Verk. And for the City Council, I'm going to do a roll call, so if you can please let us know if you're here. Councilmember Ashbeck? Councilmember Bessinger? Councilmember Monitour? Councilmember Whalen? And Mayor Flores.
Thank you very much. Our opening business. First item is that we want the approval of the minutes from the March 23rd, 2022 Citizens Advisory Committee. At this time, I'll ask for a motion, entertain a motion to approve our March 23rd, 2022 CAC minutes. And do we have a second? First and a second. Any comments? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Our next regular agenda item are matters on the Citizens Advisory Committee agenda, which are open to the public for comments. Members of the public will have an opportunity to comment on each individual item. Public comments will be heard after the presentation of an item and before the committee takes an action. To begin, the item we're looking at is receive and file Citizens Advisory Committee results. These will be presented by myself, the chair, and by our vice chair, Mr. Greg Newman. We'd like to begin by reviewing the guidelines set up for the Citizens Advisory Committee. They're posted up on the screen. The Citizens Advisory Committee. We were sent with the task to review the services the City of Clovis Police Department provides with the existing staffing and funding. Review the spending and staffing patterns within the police department over the past 15 years. Guidelines for the committee were also to evaluate the level of resources needed for Clovis to remain, quote, the safest city in the valley. Our guidelines, as noted, report recommendations to the City Council reference to spending and staffing in the police department, levels of service provided by the police department. Our guidelines also included a look at the level of resources needed for Clovis to remain the safest city in the valley, how levels of service could be maintained or improved should some kind of tax measure be recommended. This time I'm going to pass it over to Greg Newman and to begin reviewing our findings.
Okay, thank you, Chris. The process. So the CAC process, we looked at all the presentations. We had some great presentations by the city staff. So just a summary of the presentations that our committee received was the current police department status presentation. That was from Chief Fleming, a local government 101, land use, budgets, master planning presentation. We received a review of services, staffing, and current review of funding presentation, a revenue operations presentation. We allowed the committee members to email city staff with specific questions in regard to the information received from the presentations. There was 77 written questions submitted to city staff and were answered by the city staff and subsequently sent back to the committee for their information and review. Chief Fleming also offered ride-alongs to the committee, and those ride-alongs were completed over the last 5 weeks. Next slide. We also, after the fourth presentation, developed a survey that we sent out to the CAC members. 22 of the 25 completed the survey. And then the discussion on the results of the survey were performed at the March 23rd CAC meeting.
At this time, we want to review some of the results that came back to us. Before that, I want to just extend an appreciation to all the city council that's here this evening on behalf of all of the committee members here. We appreciate very much the level of trust and confidence that you placed in the 25 community members, myself included, that you gave us the responsibility of trying to evaluate this very challenging area of our city. So we appreciate that. And to all the members, to all 25 members of the community which were part of this, thank you very much. And I know that the city council, as well as all the city management here, appreciates all the effort and time that we've been putting in over the last several months. To review some of the results with the survey that Greg mentioned, as he mentioned, the survey was completed by 22 of the 25 members. Based on the information provided to the CAC, our first question, over the past 4 meetings, do you feel current Clovis Police Department staffing and funding is adequate for Clovis to remain the safest city of the valley? The result, as most of you can see, were that do we feel the current staffing is adequate? 3 responded yes of the 22 that we did respond, and 19 said no. You can see the breakdown there of 86% that said no, that the staffing is not adequate, and 14% felt that yes, it was adequate. Going on to our next question result.
Thank you. The third question of the survey, and just so you know the numbering, first question was, what is your name? And then number 2 and number 3. So that's why the numbering was off. Question number 3, one measurement of the level of service of the police department can provide is the number of sworn police officers. In order to maintain the safest city in the valley status, how many additional sworn police officers are needed over the next 5 years? So the first multiple choice option was no additional officers, 0 chose that one. 50 sworn police officers, and that would be 10 additional sworn officers per year over the next 5 years. 7 chose that, and other 15 chose that. So the majority of the respondents, or 68%, said other than the 50. These are the other responses. So as you can see, it varies, and we'll talk a little more about the results. Based on need, they're all over the board, but the majority, of course, did state that more additional officers were needed, and here's the range of officers from the respondents.
And most of these results were evaluated over the next 5-year period when you review the responses that are on your sheet there. On to the next question that was presented to our members. If an increase in services and resources is pursued, how should this be paid for? A tax increase ballot measure to be determined by City Council was 64%. As the city is able and existing revenues while maintaining other general fund departments was 18%, or 4. First one was 14. And cuts in other general fund departments, 4 respondents felt that was one of the best ways to go, which represented also 18%.
Okay, question 5. And this was a direct question from one of the council members. The city council asked, what kind of city do you want to live in? And this survey, and this is very consistent with the citizen survey that the city of Clovis sends out every 2 years to the citizens. So we use the same format. And we had them rank them 1 through 10 on the importance, 1 being the most important, 10 being the least important. So 50% of, we'll call it number ones, it was public safety, 27% the economy, 4.5% community design, 4.5% utilities, 4.5% education, then mobility, parks, health, inclusivity and engagement, and then natural environment. So we use the same type of survey that the city of Clovis uses every 2 years.
Thank you, sir. In addition, other survey responses, other thoughts and comments are available to review, presented to our city council and to all the members, and is now public. There are 16 comments provided through the survey. Attachments are provided. A summary of verbal comments of the survey results and review are attachment number 3. That was from our last meeting's discussion. 2 additional written comments were received after that meeting, which are attachment number 4. I don't know, there was one response. I don't know if that made it in there. Carrie, you might be able to remind me if there. It did? There are 2 more. Okay, gotcha. So all the responses have made it in then for your review, Mr. and Mrs. City Council.
Okay, so based on the results of the survey and the comments and the written comments, we're kind of going to go over the recommendations that this committee has for the city council, essentially the task that was handed before us. So real quick, this was what was asked of this committee. We want to report recommendations to the city council on the spending and staffing in the police department, the levels of service provided by the police department, look at the level of resources needed for Clovis to remain the safest city in the valley, and look for how levels of service could be maintained or improved should some kind of tax measure be recommended.
Okay, the CAC recommendations. That's it right there. Citizen Advisory Committee, on our recommendations, the majority of the Citizen Advisory Committee, 19 out of 25, agreed that the city Clovis Police Department is not adequately staffed or funded. 19 of our 22 responded, felt that way, and 3 did not. 86%.
Okay, levels of service provided by the police department. The members of the CAC varied on the number of additional sworn officers needed over the next 5 years, but all agreed more are needed. 68% stated more are needed. 32%, 68% said other than a different number than the 50 sworn officers are needed. Am I reading that correctly, Andy? Okay, thank you.
And those 50 sworn officers that the 32% felt was needed is based over the next 5 years. Let's see. How levels of service could be maintained or improved should some kind of tax measure be recommended? Majority of the Citizens Advisory Committee, 14 of the 25, that some sort of tax increase ballot measure be considered. The results are shown up above. Tax increase ballot measure to be determined by the city council was 64%. As the city is able with existing revenues while maintaining the general fund department, again, is 18%, and cuts in other general funds was 18%. We hope that we were able to shed some light on the attitudes and opinions of your community, our community, city council members, and that this information is of value to you as you move forward to your task of continuing to run this great city in the great fashion that you do. I'm going to turn it over to council for questions or comments at this time. We're turning it over to city council. Yes. So if we have any comments or questions from city council, I'm going to come around and you have your microphone, and I'll pass this one to you, whatever you'd like.
And just the use of the microphone, when you use it, you have to press it and keep your finger on it.
Pass this around. It's better. It's on. Talk right into it.
I first want to, I have to stand up. It's a large room and we're all COVID distance, even though we don't have to anymore. If you're fully vaccinated, I want to thank all of you for the great effort you have made and being here all this time, taking of your precious time after hours and contributing to our city. It's people like you that make Clovis the city that it is. because you two contribute to its safety. It's without your effort to keeping Clovis safe, we couldn't be the safest city in the valley, because the people that provide public safety can't know what's going on in our city without the good citizens of Clovis calling and letting them know when something truly suspicious is going on. And by that, I mean, something out of the ordinary. And then when we ask you, come and help us find solutions to what we identify as potential problems, and you come and you help us. You've identified you're a diverse group of people. You come from every walk of life, and you have the experience and the knowledge of many people that live here in Clovis, and you brought that forward. And so I think this is representative, a little microcosm of what Clovis is, and you bring this to this task. And because of that, I think what you've accomplished here means something. It's a legitimate piece of work that we as a council need to take to heart, and need to also communicate to the rest of the citizens of Clovis. You said that in the report that there is a gap, that we do need more officers to augment the force we have today. You say that that we need to pay for it somehow. You're not happy with having less service. You want to keep it at its level or higher. And so I'm hearing what you're saying, and you're saying that if it has to come to you helping to pay for it, that's also the decision that at least this group, the majority, the great majority, it's not just the majority, it's the great majority, is willing to make that sacrifice. And so we need to hear that. Some people criticize the council for abdicating our role as leaders and not making that tough decision on our own. No, I think what we try to do from the beginning, at least this council member, me, is that I wanted to hear from more people so I can get, because I wanted a barometer, and you're the barometer. You're a group of people that know Clovis. Many are leaders in many fields, and I needed to hear from you. And now we have. And because of that, I now know where we are. And it's a solid point, and it's a solid place to be. And it will help my colleagues on the council to make the tough decision of what to do, because now we know the gap, we know what potential solutions are, and the debate follows. And that's something us five will have to deal with. And there's 5 opinions, and it will be debated. We hope that all of you that have participated in this committee come to our meetings when this topic gets debated, because it will still be a debate. This question's still not over. This is just the beginning. And but you've given us a good beginning, and for that I thank you. I thank staff that assisted you, and we'll hear more from our colleagues. So I'll turn the mic over to the Mayor Pro Tem, Lynn Ashbeck.
Thank you very much, Jose. I want to share with the council members here that the people here, all 25 of us, or those that were here, 22 of us at the time right now, went through a lot over the last 4 or 5 meetings. We're talking hours and hours of absorbing information from the chief and the city here. And one conclusion to keep in mind of what you touched base on, Jose, was there are cracks in our city reference to our police department. There are cracks in our safety net here in our city. This was universal with everybody here. We understood that these cracks are being filled, whether it's by overtime or whatever it might be. But there are cracks in our system. And the conclusion with us here also was that if you weren't part of this committee, which I feel is a really fair representation of our community, all different levels, like I said, whether not just socioeconomic, but business people as well as, regular non-business people and everything. So what was felt amongst all of us was that if you weren't here for these hours and hours of get-togethers that we had, you probably really, as a citizen outside of this, you don't understand that these cracks are happening. My family, my brothers, my sisters, my cousins, my relatives, my parents, all that live here, our friends and everything, they think Clovis is just fantastic and wonderful and the safest city and nobody wants to mess with Clovis. Well, we want that reputation to continue, but we also realize, as we discussed, there's cracks in the system and they're happening. And so I just wanted to share with you that we understand that, and that's the general feeling of us here on the committee. Thank you. Lynn?
Echo, thank you to all of you for doing this. I would love to hear, do you guys come to talk, or I'd love to hear some of the minority views. So none of them were unanimous, right? So if anybody, I would just love to understand a little bit about some of the conversations about, maybe it was the question, the way it was worded. If there was anybody that's willing to share on the minority view of any of them, and there aren't any right answers on this. So I would love to hear that. And then I also would love to hear the conversations or any thoughts on the growth question, because there wasn't a question about growth. There's more than one way to solve this. And some of you speak about we should stop building houses until we can pay for those. So I'd love to just hear any of that thought. So just to enrich my brain, I can read what you said, but I'd love to hear what you thought. So those would be my two, if anybody's brave enough to share that.
Oh yeah, there's lots of brave folks in here. One comment I'm going to share, and that's what I was wondering if it had made it into the comments or not. It was mentioned by one of our members here, something along the line of, what the heck is wrong with city council? Why haven't they fixed this problem already? Why are we here? Why are we in this position? Was that in there? Yeah, that was a late comment. It was made by one of our members, and it was very, like you said, astute, bravo. And that's the kind of stuff that you're like me. You want to hear, okay, talk to us about the negative stuff also. You want the mic? You want to go for it? Yeah, we did have a lot of different comments, Lynn, so thanks for asking that.
Well, I sent this over to you earlier in the week, Chris, but as some of you may or may not understand, we had a recession in 2007 and 2008. And a lot of these people within our city gave up a lot of stuff. They gave back their salaries. They wanted to make sure that everybody who was here could stay employed. That's why there's no way that we can start taking money back out of these other districts. Whether it's, we can't take away from public safety, we can't take away from public works, we just can't do it. We have never fully recovered from 07 and 08. We've never filled back in, which is how the police department is where they are today. We've never made those accommodations. And while we were making progress, 2017, 2018, 2019, boom, COVID hit. And we've been at a dead standstill ever since. Our finances are not the same. We don't have the same level of income coming in because people weren't out there able to shop. There's just a lot of different things out there that has happened, but this has been a progressive thing. This didn't happen overnight, and our city council didn't ignore it. But we're in a position now where we have to do something about it. That's just the bottom line.
And Carrie, let me know if anybody via web wants to visit or comment. Greg, do we have a direction somewhere? Anybody at this time?
Chris, there is one online. Rachel, go ahead and
Oh,
unmute yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Rachel. Go ahead. You have the floor.
Hi there. Sorry I couldn't be there in person this evening.
That's all right. You've been a great participant throughout the whole ordeal, Rachel.
Oh, thank you. Well, it's been really interesting, and I've learned a lot, and thank you, everybody. But I wanted to speak to Councilmember Ashbeck's point about, well, I think she might have been referring to my comment about what could have been some negligence on the part of the planning department or the city council. I understand that we had a terrible recession in 2008. But I do recall that maybe it was Andy Hausler who, in giving a summary of the years following the recession, there was some there was a point at which spending outpaced revenue coming in, and the city was not balancing its budget. I'm not sure how that happened, or it was post-recession. Maybe things happened too fast, but and I'm no I'm no expert in economics or policing or anything else, but looking at the whole picture, I think that it is, it's tempting to go back and blame everything on 2007, 2008. But I really don't understand how city planning can take place, how real estate development can be planned for without accounting for everything else that is entailed when you increase the population by building, new houses and having and having the population grow. So I'm not sure what else to say about it other than I think there's something missing in the planning element of in general.
Thank you very much, Rachel. I know, knowing the city council, they appreciate very much hearing your input and exactly those comments that you just made. Is there another one?
Yes, next is Noah Elbas.
Noah, welcome. Thank you. Go ahead. You're
Hi.
the floor.
I hope you guys were able to hear me well. I apologize. I'm traveling for work today. It kind of building off of what Rachel was saying. So I was lucky enough a couple of weekends ago that Officer Specht was able to take me out on a ride along, and so it was really impactful to see just how go he and the other officers in the department are all night long. I only lasted until around 1:30 in the morning, but with the exception of stopping for 30 minutes to try to grab a bite to eat, it was go. And with that being said, we're going to burn these guys out, guys and gals, right? It is a very, very demanding job. It is a very high stress, high pressure job. Hearing him verbalize, the need for paying attention to things like mental health, their ability to be able to take breaks after they have dealt with something traumatizing on the job, so that, as they're going from one incident to the next, and they really are from one to the next, to the next, to the next, how do we keep them in tip-top shape to do that? How do we ensure that our officers are not the least paid, right, in the region, that they're not looking next door and thinking, wow, well, if I was in Fresno, I would be making X, Y, and Z dollars. But all of that being said, while I very much support additional funds going in their direction, my concern is we have gotten to this point right? Based on decisions that are being made. I understand some of this is, constraints that we're under with the state and how much we have to leave available for development and whatnot. But when we do provide those additional funds, I am in favor of a tax. I know that would have to be voted on. I would happily, as an individual, pay it myself. But the question is, let's say we pass it, let's say this happens. How do we guarantee that this doesn't happen again in 5 years from now, in 10 years from now? It seems like holistically there are some changes that need to be made so that once the problem is fixed, it's fixed and we can keep up with our growth, as opposed to coming back again in 10 years with another commission, right? Right back in the same place we started.
All right, Noah,
Thank you, Chris.
were you done? I'm sorry, I didn't want to cut you off.
No, I'm done. I was just saying thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I think with all of your comments are exactly why the city council understands this was a vibrant and effective committee here. We had some great input. Bob, you ready to go up? Thank you.
Thank you. So for me, when we decided to form this committee, I was glad that we were able to get the participation from all of you. You've each been selected by your council members to kind of, frankly, because of your love for the community of Clovis. And also, I think, for your intellect and your honesty in your approach to how you deal with issues, and hopefully this issue as well. When I was in front of you last, I had two questions that I was really focused on, and they didn't lend themselves to a survey very easily. But the two questions were, initially, how is it that despite the fact that we haven't had a significant increase in patrol officers since 2006, we have been able to remain the safest city in the valley? How is it possible that we are able to do that? And did that lend itself then to the idea of, well, maybe patrol officers aren't necessarily the key to safety in a community? And then secondly, as the public safety budget increased by 70 or 80%, depending on which accounting method you use over the last 10 years, how come, if patrol officers were so important, we didn't increase our patrol officers as we should have in order to meet the objectives of, I think, at least Chief Fleming? So that's kind of where my questions remain. I'm not sure that you guys had an opportunity to address those two questions. Again, how is it that we've been able to maintain our position as the safest city in the valley, despite the fact we haven't increased our patrol officers since 2006, or at least had them higher than they were in 2006? And then with a 70 to 80% increase in the public safety budget over the last 10 years, how come we haven't added enough patrol officers to get us above that 2006 level? Maybe it was an issue that you guys did not discuss. I have a feeling, based on the comments, that probably it was touched upon. So I'd like to hear some responses. LaDonna, it sounds like you have something.
We don't have Judy. We don't have magic. There's a lot of, Chief, you'll have to help me out here. What other areas have we given up in that we've pulled officers out of those areas to get them out on patrol? We don't have the same level of services that we used to have. We need more officers to fill in those areas right now. I'd love to see the officers back in the schools helping with different things. I'd love to see some more proactive juvenile stuff. There's many things that the police department has had to sacrifice. And at this point, there's very little room for the officers to even move up because they don't dare take anybody out of patrol right now. When you're only running 8 officers a shift, it's very difficult to cover everything that this city this size needs. I've read it a little bit of everywhere. So, but that, to answer your question, Bob, they've given up a lot. I'm just going to hand it to Diane and let her go.
Thank you very much. And in addition, it was discussed amongst all of us here, Bob, even though it may not have been addressed in the survey, that there are cracks in our system happening right now. So how are we able to maintain? Well, maybe we aren't really maintaining what we think is as safe. And the second side of that is it was reviewed with us many classifications of different kinds of things that happen from a legal standpoint that were maybe once classified as this, so they are now classified as that, which make us look, oh, we're doing a great job. Correct? As we mentioned before. Whereas this used to be classified as this kind of a criminal activity, it is now classified as a less criminal activity. So we look better, whereas in reality, things haven't changed. But with the cracks in the system, we feel, it was our observation that our police department is doing more with less. Yep, we're leaning on them pretty hard, it appears. Sorry about that.
No, I was just going to address both of those quickly. And one thing I think wasn't accurately reflected in the survey are some of those questions where there's a group that didn't fall into a specific answer. And one of those was how many officers, or is Clovis PD adequately staffed and funded? And people who said no, well, you don't know which side of the spectrum they fell on. And I think there's a little bit of that with the safest city in the valley question too, because it's really a relative term. Because if all the ships are sinking, but yours is sinking less quickly, you may still be safest. But I think our better question is, are we as safe as we were 10 years ago, 15 years ago? How, and doing a more direct comparison in that sense. So some people may have felt that we are adequately staffed and funded to remain the safest city in the valley, but that doesn't mean we're as safe as we were or as safe as we want to be. So that's one aspect. But then also as far as the patrol officers, again, I think it's kind of one of those super complex issues and questions, because what LaDonna said is accurate according to the reports that we heard, and that's basically that every officer within Clovis PD is a patrol officer right now. And so we have sacrificed what they were calling kind of the preventative measures. They're only able to react to things. And so that's a broader question than can be simply answered with, kind of one of those yes or no, or even ABC kind of things. But I think so much of what we talked about, I felt like kind of falls into more of those relative terms than the direct comparison ones. And so I just wanted to kind of clarify that part.
Yes, sir. Let me give you the mic. Absolutely. No, I'll use this one here. Oh, we got you covered. And then I'm going to pass on to just tap it at the bottom.
It's good now.
Yeah, just be sure you talk close enough to it. And then we'll
Okay.
pass it on to Vong. If you're good, we'll pass on to you next.
Okay, thank you. You were getting at a very specific question, and in my mind, we did talk about that, and we did kind of answer it, but I can see how you don't, your question is so specific that you feel like it's, we're close, but we're not quite there. So let me try and hit it on the head if I can. Chief Fleming came in and tried to address the first of your questions regarding why did we not end up with more officers if it were such a priority. And the reality is he gave a presentation very early on in our meetings and basically laid out, said, hey, here's where the 70% went. Almost all of it went to these 10 line items, which were unexpected and virtually beyond his control. My impression was, and Chief, chime in if I'm wrong, but my impression was that, yes, I was getting extra money and absolutely had every intention of hiring more officers, except for all of these expenses that were coming in beyond my control that ate it up and robbed me of my ability to hire the officers that I wanted. Does that make sense? I don't see it as anybody's fault. It's unfortunate. It sucks for us as community members. Of course, it's horrible for the chief and everybody at the police department. But with a healthy skepticism and wanting to get to the bottom of it, I asked the city administration in one of my opportunities to put an online question out to them or an email question to them. And I basically asked, is the chief put out this presentation and said these expenses were eating up a lot of that. And his argument is that they're beyond his control. can you give me an independent idea of whether or not this is true? No, I asked that of the city admin. No. But that having been said, I know the chief well enough that I could ask him anytime I want. But I did ask the city admin for kind of a second opinion on what he had presented. And the feedback I got was, he's right. Those are expenses that he really couldn't control. Perhaps very little, but virtually not at all. And to me, the way he presented it, backed up by the city admin telling me that they agree with his assessment, kind of answered that question as far as I'm concerned. To me, that question is answered. As for the second question, I think Diane couldn't have said it any better. I agree with her wholeheartedly on that. So, well, right, and she brought up the $1 million question, which is, I don't understand. I mean, I understand, but I kind of disagree with framing everything from the perspective of safest city in the valley. Of course, we talk about safest city in the valley because it's something achievable, it's something recognizable, but the reality is the valley the litmus test for whether or not we are as safe as we could be or should be or want to be? I really don't like using that as our standard. I mean, maybe it fits, maybe it doesn't, but I would imagine that there are a lot of places throughout the state and even the country that would probably beat us in crime stats, even though we're the safest in the valley. So right.
I wholeheartedly agree with the idea that if our standard is relative and everybody is going down, then that's not a position we want to be in. You know, we all strive for perfection. We're not always going to be, well, we're never going to achieve perfection, but we want to keep moving forward. So one of the comments that I noticed in the report was related to the index of crime that is committed in any individual community or in the state. And so what we looked at, or what we learned, at least from that comment that was made, is that actually we continue to improve on the crime index, but the opposite side of that, and when I say improve, that means, you know, we are actually having less crime over time in the city of Clovis. But the other side of that, and I think that was alluded to maybe by you, Chris, I can't remember who it was that said, well, but crime has changed, right? What used to be a felony is now a misdemeanor. Or what we're seeing, at least at the district attorney's office, is that, you know, people who are victims of crime, they've just stopped reporting crime because they don't think that anything's going to be done about it. And maybe they're right. So, but it's difficult for us to measure then whether we are improving if the matrix that we've been using to make that determination is unreliable. And so, or metric. So what, if we can't use the FBI's CCI or the Attorney General's CCI, then what is our metric? Is it just going to be our own feeling, I feel safer or I don't feel safer? Because if you get on the Nextdoor app, you never feel safe, right? So I think there needs to be some independent metric at some point to help us figure out, you know, whether we are actually doing better, because the metric we're looking at right now shows us that we are actually having a reduction in crime in the city of Clovis over the last 10 years, but that doesn't seem like people feel that way, right? Yep. So.
Great. Thank you, Bob. Thank you very much, Bob, for your interaction. I'm going to pass over to Vaughn, please, or somebody. Thank you.
Well, I want to echo the mayor's thanks and appreciation for all the committee members. And I also want to say thank you to our staff. I think the citizens got a flavor of how responsive our administration and the staff want to always be and are, not just to the council, but to our citizens. Because that's what we have, and that's something that I think we all should be proud of, if nothing at all, in this process, to see that what you asked, they provided, and always was gracious with the answers. And that's been my experience.
We all
I-
felt they were truly
Yeah.
amazing.
I have 3 questions with regards to the survey. My first is on question 2. There were 3 who really felt like no need for funding. No, everything is good, and I would like to hear the thought behind that. And so that's the first one. The second one is the next question, which I took the 4 who said the budget's enough, and then the 4 who also said we can just take it from other departments, which means just use with the money what we have. And so that really makes it's an 8 and 14, which teeters upon that percentage of if we go, it may or may not, the citizens may or may not pass. So I wanted to just hear those who said we have enough, why you think it's already enough, and if we were going to take from other departments, which department are we going to take from? That's interesting to hear because I think we will have to wrestle with that if it goes. And then the last question is, if we are moving into a certain measure, what is the view of the committee? Is it sort of a citizen-driven, or is it more of council-driven because they have different ways of approval, different metrics of approval? And what was the leaning of the committee and what they felt would be the most successful path forward?
Okay, well, just real quick, the asking a respondent of one of the 3 who said that the current situation is adequate, all of the survey results were anonymous. So if somebody would like to voluntarily raise their hand and say, I was one of the 3 and I would like to, right in the back here.
Let me try to use this thing again. Okay, I'll use it till it quits working. Guys, adequate means good enough. Okay, in the current moment. So I think we're kind of departing from what the question actually asked. Councilmember Whalen pointed out just one of many measurements that have been used. As we sit here today, we are one of the safest cities in this valley. So it's adequate, but that's today. And things don't stay the same. All things evolve. So what's good today is not going to be good next year, or as Chief Fleming has pointed out, in the next 5 to 10 years. And since I'm talking, I'll go ahead and add on real quick to answer Councilmember Whalen's questions. How is it that we've maintained this status? The people. Simply put, the people. We can look at numbers till we're blue in the face. It's the people. And the second question, with the 70% increase, what happened with that? Those numbers are ambiguous. I pointed out in a written piece that I submitted. I have full confidence in Chief Fleming. He put the money where he saw the need. For example, I asked him point blank about 4-6 weeks ago, in the last budget we were privy to, it was like a $4.1 million increase over the year before. And he's like, hey, we had to pay for our cars. Well, yeah, that's a big part of policing. You got to have a way to get around. So Chief Fleming has used the money that he's had where he saw fit. And he's done a really good job of getting up here every week or every other week when we've been meeting and doing his best to answer those questions. So thank you.
And just as a reminder also with Councilman Whalen, and we did ask the chief and he was very honest and, essentially it costs more today to run a police department than it did 10 years ago. So the body cams, the drones, the technology, a lot of that increased funding over the last 10 years went to those services. So when we talk about the cost per patrol officer, including the car, the funding, the infrastructure, all those things that cost, to us, that's where the majority of those increased funds went. Drew, or Councilmember Bessinger.
Thank you. I'll get over here so I don't have my back to anybody.
Hey, Drew, before you start, any other comments with regards to my second and third question at all, or no, from the committee? I think it'll give us some insight. It's kind of like what type of measure you think would work or what you would support. And, if the budget is sufficient, which was 8 out of the respondents sort of saying either use what we have or cut from the other departments. I would love to hear any comments, if any.
I guess we can take that silence as move on. Um, I'd like to join my fellow council members and thank all of you for taking time out of your busy lives to come and serve your community. I don't know that hearing what everybody's saying, LaDonna's right. We, we've taken people out of specialty units that were actually solving crimes and helping the community and put them back in patrol because that's our number one asset. Diane's right. Yeah, our ship's in better shape than other people's. Are we just sinking not as fastly? Not as fastly. That doesn't, not as fast. We have, yes, we have increased the budget and it's had to go to things that frankly, we don't have any control over. And sir, I don't remember your name, but you're right. The reason that we're the safest city in the valley is because of our citizens. And I know that for a fact. As a young police officer, I got called on a call with gang members walking down the street, barking and doing what gang members do. And I got there by myself on a Saturday morning and I detained these 3 kids. And I look over their shoulder and there were 3 men who had been doing yard work, standing behind them with rakes and shovels. And they had my back until my backup came. That's the reason that we're as safe as we are. And safety is a perception. And it kind of depends on where you live. If you're in an older part of town, you may not feel as safe. You may not feel that you get the services that other people get. I've had people tell me when I was a captain at the police department, I pay more in taxes, therefore I deserve to get more than those people. And they actually said those people, the people who live in apartments. And I had to tell him that they needed us more than he did because he had an alarm and a gate. And people don't want to necessarily hear that. We're at a position where in 2006, we had 116 officers. Here we are in 2022 and we're not there yet, not even recovered. So how do we get there? It's not going to be easy. There'll be a little bit of pain. And some people, and if someone says, I already pay too much in taxes, I don't want to pay anymore, I understand completely. It doesn't mean that you're wrong. What are you willing to accept? It comes down to that, in my mind anyway. Are you willing to have the ship that you're in start sinking? And at what point does that become an emergency? And I don't think we're in an emergency, but in the next 10 years, we could be. If you look at what's happening in our society, things aren't going to get better anytime soon. And unfortunately, we live in a state where they're legislating criminal conduct out of, it doesn't matter anymore. So whether you feel safe or not is an important element in the decision. And I just want to thank everybody for taking the time. I've appreciated the comments because it shows me that you were paying attention. And I want to thank those who either did a ride along or a virtual ride along, because it's been my experience as a police officer that people walk away with a different attitude, with a different view from when they see things from inside the car instead of seeing the car passing them. Because they notice that, did you notice that people look at you differently? Yes. And now they're looking at you differently, trying to figure out who the heck you are and what you're doing in my car. But thank you so much. And your input is very important. And the council is going to have a big decision to make. And so will the citizens of Clovis. Thank you.
Super complicated. Yeah, I'm pondering on the aspirational quality of the sentence safest city in the valley. I am not willing to accept the question, hey, are we sinking less fast than someone else? That to me is very unaspirational and very I don't know, I'm inspired by the safest city in the valley metric, and however you measure it, I get all that. But I just think we as a community need to make an affirmative statement about this is the kind of place we want to live, not I want to be better than the second worst city. I think I'm a little I'll be the minority view on that question. To me, the affirmative, I want to be the safest, measure it however you want, but I want to just push a little bit back on, are we safer than we used to be? Nothing is, I'm not as young as I used to be. I know that's a surprise. I'm not sure. I just want to frame it. I want to leave with the aspiration that I think you all want to live in the safest state in the valley. That was clearly number one, 90%, all of that. That to me is what I'm taking away. I'm also hearing there's lots of options. Think about how you plan. Think about how you grow. Think about how you fund. Think about what you do with new houses. Think about what you do with community facilities. All those are options. We didn't set you out to come and tell us there should be a tax. We set you out to say, hey, what goes into being safe and what might that look like? Taxes is just one. So I was struggling with, well, wait, I don't want to settle for, I'm better than the city that's doing worse than I am. I want to be the best. End of story. So I had to say that I feel a lot better. Okay, thanks. And I'm not as young as I used to be. That's not.
You're as young as you feel, young lady. I'm going to echo also again what Lynn is just tapping into, and I know that a lot of this committee members here that I've worked with over the last couple of months feel the same way. We want Clovis to be, to be respected as far as safety goes. This committee was made up of people that have been here for just a couple of years in our community, as well as those of us that have been here our whole lives, and so you had a real well-rounded group here represented, and those that are new came here because they felt Clovis was special, because they felt Clovis was safe. And while the majority by far of our community out there who didn't get into the weeds here and start peeling back the onion to see all the different layers of issues that are starting to creep up, still feel that way. Those of us that are on this committee that you tasked us with, Mr. and Mrs. City Council, to work with, understand, as I mentioned earlier, there are cracks in our police and safety system here. And we want to see those cracks stopped, repaired, and get back to, like Lynn has mentioned, where we're comfortable as a community, regardless of who number two is. Comments? Yep. Any more comments? We're going to go around if there's any more comments from anybody.
I just wanted to clarify. I don't know, Lynn, if you were specifically thinking that I was saying that we're safer, then that makes it okay. I was just trying to explain how someone could answer the question of, are we adequately funded and staffed to remain the safest city in the valley? And that I actually don't think that's the right question to be asking, and that it shouldn't be that kind of a relative question. It should be, like you said, it's like, are we as safe as we want to be? What's that level that Clovis expects and deserves as citizens and residents here? So I just wanted to make sure you didn't misinterpret how I was trying to express that. But then also a little bit to Vong's question, some of the questions you asked, and specifically about the one about funding, whether it should be a tax or just as the city budget grows or pulling from other general fund departments. I actually felt in some ways like I could have answered A, B, or C if I really kind of got in my own head and kind of rationalized it in a sense, because I think one of the biggest issues that most of the people on this committee have is taking the temperature of the community right now and society and the country at large and the economic situation we have. And so I heard a lot of conversation about the difference between a general tax and a special tax, being the 50% or the 2/3, recognizing that what we'd really want is funding that was specifically allocated for public safety, but recognizing that doing that as a special tax and having the 2/3 threshold was an incredible hill to try to climb this year specifically. And so, kind of in a sense of trying to be realistic, not necessarily wanting to put that answer into the survey. I think that is what I said. I don't even know, to be quite honest, at this point. But just trying to be more realistic, is that a realistic option for us? And so then when you look at, well, do you just try to grow as the city budget grows, and hoping that as the economy continues to recover and re-recover and all of those things, can we be more intentional about increasing public safety in the police department budget? And so I could answer B. But then also C is kind of that question that we saw at the end of the survey where people prioritize things, and 50% of the people answer the public safety is the number one thing. Well, then is it really a situation of looking at those priorities and really digging down deep into the weeds of the budgets and seeing what can we do with that? I think everybody recognizes that when you look at the general fund and you realize that public safety already has the incredible lion's share of it. And also, like LaDonna said, everybody already pitched in and made sacrifices, over 10 years ago with that recession. And now we're back in, other economic difficulties and that. So none of them seem like the most realistic answer, but all of them maybe had elements that, as we went through this process, had validity. I don't know if that helps at all.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on what Diane said, we started going down that road of are we going to recommend to the council what type of tax, all this. And then the staff was great. They educated us. They gave us the quick and dirty version of ballot measures and taxes. And then we kind of decided as a group, we're going to stop right here. I don't think it was our role to specifically tell the council how to do this. We can recommend a tax increase. We're going to leave it up to you and the experts and the financial experts to figure out which one is the most appropriate for the city of Clovis.
Yeah, amazing, great input from everybody this evening. I'm going to throw around, everybody get a last chance to make some more comments. We're not necessarily done at all. We have as long as we need, as long as we have comments. And Blake, I'll get to you next. Thank you.
Yep. At the start of this committee, obviously came in with a task at hand of finding out exactly what was going on with law enforcement in our city. And I got to say that Chief Fleming did an amazing job with his presentation. Most of us in here, obviously there are some former officers, some current officers, but a lot of us just don't know the business of law enforcement. And I want to say the chief did an amazing job of walking us through when you go in front of council every year during budget time of this is what everything's costs now. This is the expectations of what is going to cost. And also the contracts that are coming up with your officers and how that's going to be changing in the coming years. For someone who did not know the ins and outs of that, you made it very, very easy to say, yeah, you definitely need more than what you have now. Now, how we get to that, we have professionals that are running the city, and that'll be a different discussion. But it was very, very easy to be able to take a look at your numbers and say, with using these metrics, and you're the chief, there's a reason why you're here. You know what you're doing. It was very easy to be able to say, you need more than what you have right now. So as a committee member, it was very, very nice to be able to say, okay, we don't need to be here 3-4 months. I knew within your presentation, you needed more. I also want to say that the city manager's office, Andy, did an amazing job of being able to open the books and walk us through how every penny comes into our city. And I don't think any of us outside of the council members really knew the metrics that is used with sales tax, the metrics that is used with property tax, the metrics that we are going to use in different ways of bringing new revenue into the city so that no one could walk out of here and say, well, what if we would have just taxed the hotels more? What if we would have just done a parcel tax? Staff did an amazing job walking all of us through how every penny comes into this city, how we get to the new revenue to pay for those. That's what we elect the council for, and I'm sure they're going to figure it out. But for this committee, we knew exactly what the chief needed. We knew exactly how much money is coming in and what the expectations are for the budget, not just this year, but for the years to come. So I can leave this commission knowing, very well that we're in great hands as a city, and we're going to continue to be in great hands with the management of our money and the management of law enforcement and with our city council. So I feel a lot better, no matter how council figures out a way to pay for the new officers. I know that in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, when my son goes off to college, that he had an amazing childhood in this city because of the people that are in this room today. And thank you for letting me be a part of it.
Thanks, thanks, partner. Blake, here you go. You're up.
Yeah, I just want to kind of echo some of Jim's comments. You know, I think to the city staff, Chief Fleming, just thank you for walking us through every penny, every cent, every detail of, you know, all the information that we needed, and probably more than enough information, you know, to be able to make a decision, make a recommendation to the city council leadership that's here with us this evening. And also just thank you to the city council for allowing us to give our input and for appointing such a diverse group of citizens to this committee. I think it's been very valuable throughout this time. I just kind of want to pose, you know, we've been throwing around some of the details, some of the nitty gritty stuff, but I think, you know, the city council really is charged with figuring that stuff out. I would more just kind of, I posed this question last meeting, but I would just kind of pose it as a reminder, you know, what type of city do not only we want to live in, but also leave behind for the next generation, the following generation. And that's really the way I look at it. I'm a, you know, brand new owner in the city of Clovis. You know, I kind of see this as an issue for my kids, hopefully their kids. And I want to see the same, if not a better Clovis, a safer Clovis than it is today. And so whether, you know, no matter how the funding, like Jim said, comes through, I really just think that through this process, I have gained a lot of trust in our city staff and our city council in being able to come to a resolution and figure out this decision. So thank you for letting me be a part of it.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks, Blake, for those comments. I'm going to throw the mic up again. If anybody wants to make another comment at this time, council member or citizen. Yep, here we go. Karen, I'll get you in 1 minute, okay?
Don't. Nope.
That's
Okay.
easier.
Okay. My memory's good, but it's not super great. But there was mention, and I have had so much guilt about this. It was discussed that there is a tax that property owners pay if your house was built after like 1980 or something. And I live in Old Town and all of my property is in Old Town. And I feel really guilty that I have not been paying that tax all these years. And I don't know if there's a way to go back and, I mean, not backdate us, but starting now from here forward. No, I don't want to go back, but is there a way for us? I mean, how many houses and businesses have been here since before 1980 that none of us are contributing?
2004.
Oh, 2004, excuse me.
Yes.
Okay, so even that since 2004, that's even worse. Since 2004, previous to that, nobody is paying this extra property tax. And I really don't feel that's right. I'd be very happy to pay it and be paying my share.
Yeah, it's a great comment, and we need city council to hear that. Oh, here you go.
Okay, so, you know, being part of this group has been really interesting. It's been eye-opening for me. So, but I keep going back to history, what we experienced in 2008 when the housing market crashed. And I want, you know, from what we've been presented with, the police department is barely getting back to where they were, barely. And my worry is that we're having another housing market boom. What if something happens? We're not ready. You know, you're saying that departments have to cut back. Other departments have had to cut back. And I remember in 2008 when parks, you know, couldn't go out and mow the lawn. You had neighbors going out to mow the lawn. They all stepped in. And going to the lady's comment about how if houses built before 2004 don't have to pay this special tax. I also feel guilty. I mean, because I enjoy living in Clovis. I've volunteered time within Clovis. I want it to continue to grow, but we got to look to what's going to be happening in the next 5 years, the next 10 years. And right now this budget is relied on the property tax and the sales tax. If property taxes drop, you know, what are we going to do to fund the public safety? What are we going to do to fund parks? I don't think any departments across the city staff can afford another cutback or reduce services because parks, recreation, arts and culture, they all help with public safety. Because I remember in 2008 when we had problems with the parks not being mowed, there were weeds growing. We had problems with people coming in, and there was a little bit. I think in my area there was a slight uptick in crime. But if that's all maintained throughout the city, it's going to help the police department. So I think overall we got to do something to help the city of Clovis overall, and hopefully this would help enhance the police department.
All right, thank you very much for those comments. I think this is exactly what our city council was hoping to hear this evening. Some of the nuts and bolts of more than just the survey results. So thank you again. Comments? Throwing it up. Looks like there are no more comments. Are there any public comments from anyone in the room? Thank you, Andy.
Hello. Yeah, my name's Brian Wilson. I'm at 469 Bergen Avenue, Clovis. I was shocked when I watched the first one over the medium on the computer when the chief was discussing it. It was your first meeting. That's why I showed up here, because I wanted to get a real education. I've been to every meeting since that first one that I watched online. And my biggest take from this whole thing was that there needs to be some kind of tax increase somehow. Don't know which way to go. If it's alcohol tax, we have a city alcohol tax. Is that possible? No, it's not possible. Okay, I don't know. I went and ran a thing through the city. I was working with the police department to try to get some information about crimes that are alcohol related. It's a drunk broke into the house or a drunk driver. We got those statistics. It's those other ones, a domestic that might have happened that was alcohol related. They don't keep those records. Did you know that, Chief? You don't keep them. They said they'd have to go back through a log book to try to dig it up. It would take hours. And I said, forget it. We don't need it. My question is, if the city council needs to step up and be leaders and tell the city we need a tax increase, whichever way you choose fit, whether it's a sales tax, property tax, alcohol tax. My biggest shock was when I was here was the increase in calls to your apartments, or not apartments, your hotels. We've expanded huge hotels, lots of hotels. It went up like, I don't know what the percentage was, but it went from 200 and some odd calls in 18 or 19 to 900 calls at your hotels, which is great, but that's where the services are coming from now. They're taking and going over to those. Transients pay sales tax because they're probably here paying sales tax. They're paying hotel taxes. So I say sales tax is the better way. I was around when we did the fire police headquarters and worked on that program. No one likes paying taxes, but it passed very well. I just don't think we're doing enough selling unless people are on next door to really understand some of the problems. The other day on the December 18th calls, I guess it was the 18th, when we had the murder, the shooting, and had a bunch of other shootings happening in downtown and in Clovis. I really didn't see too much on TV, on the news. The news is what sells it to the public. There's like 3 people here through all these meetings that were from the general public. This is a big meeting. We got a lot of people here. It's great, but that's not the everyday occurrence. And I understand there's a lot to running a city. You don't want to cut I'm walking the dog all the time. I like our green belts that we have. They're beautiful. We got to keep them. That's part of the Clovis way of life. I moved here in 81, and I did it based on calls for service. I called the city up. City of Fresno said they usually run about 15 or 20 backlog calls. Clovis said, we don't even know what that is. We just call somebody else in to handle it. That was back a few years. But the city is changing. I've noticed a big change. We got a lot more street racing, you see a lot of donuts in the intersections now. I don't know where our traffic cops are, but it takes cops on the street to find that happen. You can't have 8 cops running a city this size. And I do like how we're branching out into the north and with these little, that's beautiful. And people love that kind of community. I feel it draws officers further away from the core. So my whole thinking is it's the leadership that we elect, that's the city council, to come up with the plan. I kind of did like some of the parks, Fresno Parks program, where it was a committee, a citizens committee that got it put through. It takes somebody to step to the plate, but that would only need the 50+1, which is a lot easier to achieve than a 66. So it's a tough road to haul. So thank you very much.
All right, fantastic. Thank you for those comments. The mic is still open if anybody else has a comment. Yeah, no, absolutely. Hold on one sec.
Yes, I appreciate the council being here and listening to us, and especially the city staff, as others have mentioned. It was like a mini boot camp of what we learned, so I really appreciate that. My question is the city of Clovis, does a fiscal year end June 30th? Okay, so, and I know the mayor talked about this, so do you have an idea when it may be on the next city council agenda so we could be involved, the next steps of the process?
And if I'm not mistaken, you said it wouldn't be the next meeting in April, it'd be the first one in May, you were saying. Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, just like the school district, these agendas are published public online someplace, Carrie, for we can check and see whenever it shows up. Oh, there's our little things. We can show up and take our flags and stuff. T-shirts. Yeah, well, the T-shirts and stuff. Guys, good.
Chris, while we're still a committee, can we ask staff, Andy, could you let the committee know when this is on the council agenda, please?
No, we can communicate that, no problem.
Perfect. Thank you.
As I said when I opened up, this is the first step. And it's been a great experience. I had great faith in this group, and you have not disappointed. There's so much wisdom in this room, and I appreciate all the work. What I've heard today has given me so much to work with. So when we're making those decisions, John and I will work on that agenda. Will probably be the first meeting in May, and all of you, the committee especially, will get an invitation to that meeting. That way, you know when it's happening. The nuggets of wisdom that we've received today will help us in the tough decisions that we have to make. Like I said, this is the beginning, because we have never abdicated our role of leadership. We knew that what we needed to do is take the temperature of our city, and that's why you are here. Now that we know what it is, now it's our turn, and the debate starts, and we get the job done. There's many ways to skin the proverbial kitten, cat. I'm not a cat fan. I'm a puppy guy. And we don't do that. And so there's many ways. The budget is very complex. You learn that. Staff has been very transparent. And one thing that I know the city can promise is that we will continue with that transparency, that if a dollar comes into the coffers of our city, you'll know where it goes. There's no one doing something that is, they're not absconding with money. There's no malfeasance going on. We have used new technology for better things. There's force multipliers. If we're probably, another reason we're a safer city is because the officers here, the police department has used newer technology to make sure that their force is multiplied. So that's another explanation why we're still a safe city, because instead of using 3 officers, we need, it's like having 5 with our drones, and all the other things they do with technology. And that's a good thing. And so, and Jacob, was it? That's why I said earlier, it's our citizens, it's you. You've demonstrated this today. It is our city. It's all of us that we care about our city. We care enough to come here and do the work, the heavy lifting for our community. And I'm very proud of you. Thank you for all the work you've done on behalf of our city, on behalf of public safety. And you guys deserve a great round of applause. So thank you.
Thank you, Jose. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Appreciate all the comments. Before we close up here real quick, Greg, did you have anything else you want to throw out, or are you good? Did you have a comment, or are you okay? You're good? Okay. The term that my dad used to share, and many of you have heard it also, is we're all spokes on the wheel that make the wheel as strong as it is. Every city council member here, you're invaluable. You're appreciated. Everybody up here in the city, thank you, fire. Thank you, police. Thank you, everybody who helps make the city what we are. Thank you, citizens. And we all play our part. When I was, you talk about transparency and stuff, and we all have faith in the transparency of our city council. But the city community really, really expects a lot out of you city council members. As probably everybody here knows, I was on the school board when I was president I was there for 12 years. And when I was president, I used to get comments from our school board members, a couple of them. Oh, we need to have more of our community here. We need to put it on TV. We need to let them know what's going on. We need to invite them and be sure that they understand what we're doing here. It's a lot of important stuff and a lot of work. And I said, that's all fine and that's true. But remember, you were elected. You were elected to do a job. We were elected to do our job. These families, they have things to do. They got kids they got to get to soccer practice and baseball practice and feed dinner and go to work at everything. They really don't have time to get involved in all the specifics that are going on in the school district on a daily basis. And our community really doesn't have the time to be involved in every decision making that you guys are facing on a daily, weekly basis. We really expect, and you've proven, you've stepped at the table. The community expects you guys to do the right thing, and we know that you will. And you've shown that already. So we said, this is what we need. When you say to us, how do we do it? We said, I don't know, that's your job. That's it. So thank you over here. Thank you guys all. Every member here, every city council member, thank you all for being here. And over there with the fancy cameras over there, thank you also for caring enough to be here tonight also. If there's no more comments, questions? All right, our meeting's adjourned. Thank you all very much.